Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second session, the second day 2 of Climate Action Week. We have an amazing panel with us who are going to talk about how to introduce sustainability and taking the first steps for sustainability in your institution. Just a bit about CANI before we proceed. CANI was founded in late 2019, and the first ever event was in 2020. It is a completely volunteer-run organization. We have a global board and regional chapters, and we have amazing set of working groups, which include greening conferences, communications, the CANI Accord Accelerator, climate justice, content library, to name a few. We have reach with practitioners from 750 plus institutions across the world. The vision, like CANI, is for international educators and for international educators. The vision is to have a reimagined international education sector that reaches net zero emissions by year 2030. And the mission is to mobilize the full power of international education to address climate emergency. And we are proud recipients of 2 awards as well. And what is the Climate Action Week about? It is the first time that we are having the Climate Action Week in April. Previously, we've had leadership conferences, or there was a Climate Action Week last year in November as well. This time around, in conjunction with the Earth Month, you are invited to join international educators and practitioners around the world, taking part in thematic sessions and live podcast events where we will be discussing and addressing hot topics surrounding climate action in the international education. You will also have the opportunity to connect with and learn from fellow professionals as well. So a very warm welcome once again. And now I will be sharing a bit about the presenters. We have Adinda. So before that, just a quick thank to the sponsor, Alethea Global Cooperative. Alethea is our sponsor for this Climate Action Week. They are a worker cooperative providing consulting services to decarbonize international education by focusing on equity-centered climate action. Some of the services include international operations assessment and professional development training, policy writing, so putting the power of communication. And they are proud signatories of the CANI Accord and the proud supporter of Climate Action Week as well. Moving on to the amazing presenters that we have Adinda, who is joining us from Holland University, Monica, who is joining us from the Syracuse University, Madrid, and we have Jean with us, who is joining from the University of Sydney. So I will now hand over the stage to them to introduce a bit about their organizations and themselves and carry on with this session. So over to Jane.
Thank you, Mavish, and hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. And thank you, CANI, for hosting this wonderful session and giving us an opportunity to talk about what we're doing at our institutions in the world of sustainability. So, hello, I am Jane Andrews. I am a study abroad advisor at the University of Sydney in sunny Australia, although it is getting a little bit chilly on this side of the world. And today I am going to be talking about where to start with sustainability, of internationalization, specifically how to create a program. Before starting, I do want to acknowledge that I am on Cammeraygal land in Australia, in the northern part of Sydney, and I'd like to pay my respect to those past, present, and emerging before I do this presentation today. So if I could get the next slide, please. I work in the inbound study abroad team at the University of Sydney, and my role specifically requires me to look after the entire life cycle of inbound study abroad students from dozens of countries around the world. And a couple of years ago, the University of Sydney made sustainability a pillar of its strategy, specifically to demonstrate our commitment to sustainability through themed programming, thoughtful carbon reduction and mitigation strategies, among other things. And so I wanted to make it a goal of mine last year to focus on that one part of it, the themed programming. And I decided to come up with this Sydney Sustainability Program that the inbound study abroad students could opt into, either to earn credit for their program or to take it as an extra curricular opportunity. Essentially, you can see from this little handout here, it's a very basic structure where students can either take, like I said, a unit of study or undertake some volunteering, depending on if they want credit or not. And then all the students undertake a series of roughly 5 activities that we organize for them throughout the semester and earn points by undertaking those activities. At the end of the program, provided they've met all the requirements, they do earn a digital credential or a digital badge and a certificate, which they can publish onto LinkedIn, among other social media platforms. And they also get like a digital certificate they can use to share with prospective job sites or in further studies. And I might just move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. And so what I'd like to do today is I'd like to take you through or walk you through some of the steps that I took to create this program. It's still in its early stages. I would say I'm still constantly trying to develop and improve it. But I think what's most important to preface is by saying that I had no degree in environmental studies or sustainability. In fact, it's something I'm constantly learning about every single day, and I'm learning a lot through this program. And so it really is achievable and can be done by any member of staff, I would say. And I'd like to walk you through some of these steps, which you can use to get started if you were interested in creating a similar program. I'll start with the first step, if we could go to the next slide. And that is finding opportunities to collaborate. So the main tip of this entire slide is to say that you really don't have to take on this project on your own. Initially, I thought I did, and that was my first mistake. I came to learn as we evolved this program over the last 8 months that there is likely going to be teams in your institution or even assistance from management, which can help make this a lot easier. So internally, the University of Sydney has a dedicated sustainability team, which I managed to find a contact in, and we have worked very closely together. They have helped offer particular opportunities and events, and I have been able to source some volunteers to help their team as well. So it's been quite a reciprocal sort of arrangement that we've had there. Also, don't be afraid to reach out to student groups. There are so many, societies and clubs based around sustainability. We're at USyd, we have like Waste Fighters, we have the Food Co-op, we have the Enviro Collective, and I've spoken to a few of their student representatives and managed to place some volunteers, but also able to get a lot of activities that we could publish and encourage the students to do. I also sought some assistance from management. They were really great, and I felt very supported in being able to reach out to different areas of the university for like I said, those activities and volunteering. But we also were able to hire an intern, and one of the projects I had the intern work on with me was this sustainability program and developing a sustainability guide, which I'll get to in a moment. And of course, always useful to reach out to like your local councils or any other like nonprofits or sustainable organizations in the city that you reside in. Next slide. After you've realized or basically done a bit of research on the kind of teams that exist and the kind of opportunities that might exist, having this knowledge really then helped me shape what the format of the program would be. So initially I had started the program and had a tier system. So students could, if students got a certain amount of points, it would be tier 1, extra points would be tier 2. And we found that there wasn't as much engagement with this sort of layout for a program. And I really did need to simplify it so that students could comprehend and be willing to join the program. So I found that a very simple stream system was easy to understand. It opened up this opportunity for credit and non-credit students. And then both students, regardless of what stream they chose, would complete 5 activities. I had finalized and decided on a biodiversity tour in the Sydney Botanical Gardens. We all did a few cleanup events to clean up in our local areas and parks. I sourced some speakers to hold a speaker series on like waste management, as well as taking climate action. And then the other two tasks were sort of autonomous. So the students would write to a company or a local politician about a sustainable issue that they're passionate about. And at the end of the program, they would conduct a reflection task. Of course, we also left some room for students who weren't able to attend an event if they were unwell or had a timetable clash. And so we essentially gave them the reins and said, as long as you can prove that you've done at least 1 hour of an alternative activity and that it was sustainably focused, we would accept that as like making up those points for any missed activities. Once those activities and their unit of study or their volunteering was met, they would receive that, they would upload the evidence and receive a digital badge of completion. Next slide, please. After you've created the layout, I then needed to research volunteering opportunities, because we found that we had a large portion of students who weren't, who are essentially opting for that volunteer stream. And then, for example, this semester we had about 60 students, and so trying to source about 60 volunteering opportunities was initially, I thought, challenging, but once again we did lean on some local gardens and a UCID run or a university run garden as well. Once again, you should already have a lot of this information from the first step by, developing those connections and researching who exists internally and externally. And we also like to keep the volunteering opportunities like as fun and entertaining as possible to encourage that engagement. So something as simple as making your cleanup events near a waterfront location, going to Bondi Beach, doing it, we held it at Piermont Park or Barangaroo, where there are these beautiful waterfront locations that did have trash that needed to be picked up, but also encouraged the students to go because they got to see a part of Sydney that they might not have explored yet. And the other thing is we also split up the events into virtual and in person. So like I said, the biodiversity tour, the cleanup was in person. And then the writing tasks and the speaker series were virtual. So it made it a lot easier for the students to engage and complete those activities. Next slide, please. I'd like to just now show you a few photos from our program, which we've run so far. So we started we launched the sustainability program for our short-term winter program, which runs from 3 to 6 weeks in winter of 2022. We then launched to a larger cohort in semester 2, and we're starting again for semester 1, 2023. And these are some pictures to sort of show what we've done so far. For the volunteering stream, we partnered with Pocket City Farms, which is in Camperdown, about a 10-minute walk from campus. Once again, this is like a place where students learn about local agriculture, urban farming, and essentially because it was so close to where they resided and the campus, we did have a lot of students interested in this volunteering option. Next slide. The Biodiversity Tour was held in the Sydney Botanical Gardens. So this was probably the furthest that students had to travel, but still in the middle of the city, if you are familiar with the city of Sydney. As you can see, beautiful waterfront location. It really gets students excited about learning, but also getting to see part of the city, which is also why they essentially signed up to do a study abroad program. This was a great opportunity for students. On this day, we learnt about the really unfortunate bee, that disease, which I don't know the name of, that is affecting the bee populations. And Australia had held it off for many months while the rest of the world were impacted by it. But unfortunately, it did break through and affected some bee populations up in the north coast, I believe. So it's really important for students to learn about this and essentially take that information back to their home countries. The cleanup event was held at Pirima Park in Piedmont. This can be done at anywhere. Usually depending on the cohort or how many students you have in the program, I would recommend alternating between, if you have a smaller cohort, it's easier to create and schedule your own cleanup events. It's completely free. This is it within Australia, of course. They do send you free cleaning materials and cleaning bags and gloves. So it might be worth seeing if you have something similar in your country or city or even council. Alternatively, as our program grew, we ended up asking students to join like a public cleanup. So rather than organizing our own, because of the large cohort, there are dozens and dozens of public cleanups being held every weekend, and we just asked students to direct themselves to one that was most suitable for them and provide evidence that they attended. We held a speaker series. We held 2 last year, and we had a range of speakers, everyone from internally, we had some professors in the school or the Faculty of Engineering. We had counsellors, and we also had some climate change activists and some firefighters as well, which gave really varying, I guess, opinions and their areas of expertise on different topics relating to sustainability and climate change in a local context or in a national context within Australia. If you do decide to hold a speaker series or something similar, I really do encourage students to submit a question as part of the registration process. You can do that as a feature of Zoom. I find that it was the best way to have a pool of questions ready to ask our presenters, because as we know, some people can get a little bit camera shy and not want to speak up, particularly if there's a large amount of people on the Zoom call. So I do recommend doing that as well. Next slide, please. And a few more points from me. Essentially, you are going to need a platform to publish this information, to collect their files, to prove of their evidence, to show that they attended these events. I just leaned on the platform that the University of Sydney already uses for its units of study or for its courses, and that platform was Canvas. So potentially look into what your institution is using. If you're not an academic and you're a professional staff member, look at what the academics are using to publish like their unit outline, syllabus, and to engage with the students. It's likely a similar platform that you will be able to utilize to create this sort of page as well, or a landing page. Next slide, please. Now this step is completely optional. We wanted to give students some background information about climate change and about sustainability in a local and national context before or just as they arrive to Sydney. Obviously, this is a huge topic, and it's not something that I expect these students to learn everything about in a matter of months. And so this was a guide that we had the intern create and reference. Basically, we're having an essay, but ChatGPT now exists these days, and I guarantee it would be able to write something that you could triple check to make sure it's accurate and reference the relevant points. So I think if it's time sensitive, or if you are time restricted and don't have a lot of time, rely on things like ChatGPT, rely on platforms like Canva, where I designed this guide. I have no background in graphic design, and it took me probably 20 minutes to pull this together just by pasting some icons and the text. So it really is easier than it might look. And this was a guide that we distributed to the students who joined the program and asked them to read it as before they even commenced and started doing these other activities, to give them a bit of context about what they were going to learn. Next slide, please. And then promote your program, of course. So we promoted the Sydney Sustainability Program to partner institutions at conferences. We had a dedicated section in our study abroad guide about the program, so to try and entice students to join once they, if they were joining us at USyd. We sent an email bulletin a couple of weeks before the start of semester, and all of these efforts essentially allowed our program to grow to the numbers that I'll touch on the next slide, please. And then finally, the final step is to measure the impact of the program. So like I said, this is still very new to me. It's still growing. I'm still learning a lot. It is the first program of its kind in study abroad in Australia. It is very low cost. Like I said, we've been leveraging the existing relationships inside the university as well as those externally, like local councils, you know, seeking volunteering opportunities with non-profit organizations, and some facts that, based on the numbers that we've accrued over the last year, we have been able to educate 82 participants in 2022. So that was our short-term and semester 2 programs. And then the completion rate of those students was about 20%. And this is where that number was a little bit startling. It was a mix of, I think it was a result of an overcomplicated layout of the program. So like I said, I initially had a tiered system, which I don't think worked very well. But I'm expecting that completion rate to increase with the current semester 1 program that we're running right now. And we already have 80 students who have registered for the program. So that's in one semester alone, we've done what two programs did last year. So we're very excited to keep this program growing and moving and collaborating with new people. And that is everything from me. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Jane. That was very interesting. And I have many questions for you. Not many, but some. So my name is Monica Perez Bedmar. I teach earth science courses in 2 study abroad university, but a campus in Madrid. And I also teach in several other study abroad programs like Syracuse University in Madrid. So I've taught oceanography and earth science for 15, or maybe more, 15 years in these study abroad programs. And really, I've always felt like I'm kind of alone on this topic in Spain. And so the focus on study abroad traditionally in Spain has always been language and culture, and not so much the earth science courses. But in the past 5 years, it's taken off a little bit, and so there's a growing interest in sustainability issues, but not so much. Can you go to the first slide, B? Sorry. So when the first one, almost there. Almost there, but not quite. Okay, so I'm gonna raise that title because we're not there, but by far. After hearing Jane, I'm like, madre mia, this is, o sea, we're not even like, we're like in step 0 of the process of incorporating sustainability in our programs. But anyway, so that title I would change after hearing Jane and after seeing everything that they're doing in the University of Sydney. But anyway, okay, so 3 years ago, and another part of my life is that I used to be the executive director of the Association of Study Abroad Programs in Spain, in Abapune, and some of our colleagues are here, Luis and Maite, so hello. So anyway, 3 years ago, I became the they named me the advisor for the environmental club in St. Louis University. And that's, it was kind of, there wasn't much going on in sustainability issues not even in St. Louis University, nor in the study abroad programs in Spain. But slowly, we've been trying to incorporate sustainability into the curriculums, and also to make the professors and staff aware that these are important issues. One of the points that we are trying to make is that sustainability is something that students and study abroad students are looking into. So I collected some data, and now we can go to the next slide, B. This is something I presented to the study abroad programs in Spain in our last assembly, which was in February, to make the study abroad directors in Spain and the staff in Spain realize that the students' interest in SDG was increasing. So this is on a survey that I found from the UNESCO, and bueno, they surveyed 3,247 students, and 91 said that they agreed that the programs should promote sustainable development. 70% would like to see sustainable development incorporated and promoted throughout the courses. 81 says that sustainable development is something that they would like to learn more about. Bueno, and all that. And then at the end, the last one is 25% say that they have never heard of the sustainable development goals. This semester, I have 100 students. I teach 4 classes, and I surveyed those 100 students to see if they had any idea of what the sustainable development goals were. Basically, what I did was I put the circle of the sustainable development goals, the colors, and I told them, what do you think this is? So what is this? And from the 100 students, only 3 knew what they were. The rest of them just answered that they didn't know what they were. Some of them said that it was the strips that were used for chemistry. And some others said that they were the LGBTQ colors that they had changed the pattern. So anyway, in my experience, we have a long, long way to go. So they're almost there. We're not there. Can you pass B to the next one? Another another report that I found was that the number of green jobs is growing globally, 8% over the last 5 years. And even though the jobs for the green jobs or jobs that have to do with sustainability are growing at 8%, not many people are expressing that they have skills related to this 8%. I'm going to put the references in the PowerPoints where I got the information so that you all can have it. Another data was that in the US, jobs in renewable energy and environment sectors grew by 237 over the last 5 years. So there's an interest, and there's a necessity to teach about sustainability. And the number of companies with chief sustainability offices and executive positions are also tripled from 9% to 20% between 2016 and 2021. So there is an interest. Many times, because of the political situation or whatever situations, they don't learn about these things. For example, in the US, we teach students at the US. So there is a necessity, and it can be and to increase the interest of participating in study abroad programs, if the study abroad programs offer this type of activities, like all the things that Jane does in the University of, for example. And anyway, these are some of the fastest growing green jobs globally: sustainability manager, wind turbine technician, solar consultant, or ecologist, all these. And you have the research down there. Okay, next B. And no, that's, oh look, University of Sydney. I knew that it sounded familiar. It's ranked second on the ranking of universities with a major compromise towards the consecution of the SDGs. So congratulations. Next B. And bueno, there's more and more interest for universities and for study abroad programs to incorporate the SDGs. Next. And what we're trying to promote, at least here there's Universities Restoring Nature. This is an alliance of nature positive universities. And what we're trying to incorporate in the study abroad programs here in Spain is the SDGs aligned with the forum standards. I guess everybody's aware, knows about the forum on education abroad. So next B. Well, when I was named environmental advisor for the environmental club, this was the first activity that we organized. Only 3 people showed up. And because I gave them extra credit, it was pretty depressing. very depressing. I'm like, well, yeah, that's how the world is going. Nobody's interested in this. So we tried to get the university involved. We did get some money from the university, and we did get a little bit of commitment from the staff. But anyway, this is how we started in SLU Madrid. B, next. And after, well, what are the obstacles that I encountered? Although I had thought about these subjects for 15 years, I've talked about climate change for 15 years. Really, I think I felt like there was no interest about it. Or I felt that it wasn't like a priority of the university. Sustainability wasn't a priority, basically. There's very few science professors in SLU Madrid campus. There's only 4. And it wasn't something that I felt like people would pay attention to, or the professors would pay attention to, or that staff even like was concerned about. The perception of earth science as something minor. Many times I've had to justify that we have field trips to other professors that think that it's a waste of time. So I've had those types of obstacles, no? And slowly people are realizing that maybe this is something that we should talk about, especially since they started to learn about the SDGs. There has been a low student engagement. There's been disconnection between departments, and then there's a question also of time. So these are the obstacles that I encountered 3 years ago when I started to try to incorporate these issues or these topics into practices in the university and in the curriculum of the programs of the professors. Next, B. So after the pandemic and after everything recovered, suddenly there's a lot of people that have joined the environmental club. So I don't know if this is because everybody was stuck in their houses in the pandemic and now everybody wants to like go out or they've learned more. There's a big interest in our student body about environmental issues. This is the first, this is an activity that we organized last year. It was a trash cleanup and a hike. We've organized other activities for students with other study abroad programs like Tufts University, or Maite and Luis are here. We've done tree plantations. But really what I wanted to do was involve the staff and involve the professors. So next. With a little help from my friends and basically from CANI, from going to the talks on CANI, from joining CANI, from being more involved, I got the inspiration and I'm like, no, this is an important topic and we have to start dealing with this. And so I thank you, everybody that volunteers for CANI and is involved and started CANI. And so next, B. Last November, we organized Climate Action Week inspired. We did many activities during this week. They were led by Mental Club, but I got several professors from the business department, which is very important, involved in the activities of this Climate Action Week. Next, please. So we organized activities. We organized 2 talks. Can we reach net zero? Can business be sustainable? And I think the best thing that we've done last semester was getting the departments connected, getting business professors in the business department that are starting to talk about sustainable business, who are interested in the topic on board, because they have become great allies. And or fortunately, I don't know what, the university pays more attention to the business department than to me. So this is great. We had 2 talks. We had a club day, which we connected professors with the different clubs that are on campuses. We did a tree plantation with other study abroad students, and we got involved. We got study abroad staff involved also in this. And we're organizing the interdepartmental talks on sustainability, human rights, and climate change. Next, please. Well, these are some pictures of that club day with several professors from other departments also involved in sustainability issues, like connection between, for example, biodiversity and sustainability, in art and sustainability. So it was like pretty interesting. And it made professors from other departments and other areas realized that there was a connection between their topics and sustainability. So next, please. Oh, and we started the Sustainability Observatory, which is to incorporate the SDGs transversely throughout the operations and teaching on campus. We want to audit the Madrid campus, the SLU Madrid campus, incorporate our efforts in a webpage. So Jane, thank you, because I got a lot of good ideas there. We want to also offer internships to help us do the ecological footprint, the carbon footprint. Next. These are some of the proposed actions. Sign the CAW Accord. So now we have the business professor saying that we have to sign the CAW Accord. We will sign the CAW Accord. And we will also be using the Foreign Education Abroad guidelines. Next. And what are some tips? I think Jane also mentioned these. Start small and grow as you make allies. Even the business department better. Involve your students because they catalyze the movement. And then don't be scared and talk about the SDGs, talk about climate change because it is important. I think I was very silent for many, many years, and it's something that needs to be addressed and needs to be talked about. And then I recommend join CAW and participate all you can because you have resources. It gives you a lot of ideas. You have like-minded colleagues, and it's therapeutic many times. So, and I think that's it. Thank you. And I pass the word on to Adinda.
Yes, thank you. So my name is Adinda van Galen, and I'm a coordinator of the research policy team at In Holland University of Applied Sciences in the Netherlands. But I'm also a strategic advisor on internationalization to the board of In Holland. And I'm a PhD candidate at Ghent University, focusing on internationalization strategy development. And one of the elements is that I'm looking into dilemmas in internationalization. And for me, the carbon footprint is one of the biggest challenges, one of the biggest dilemmas. So what I'm trying to do is incorporate the knowledge that I gained through my PhD also in the work that I do for In Holland University. And so it's really about a balancing act between international cooperation and the climate emergency. And as my university, we've recently launched our new strategic plan, in which sustainability is a big element, as in many institutional plans, I suppose. And so one of our thematic areas for both education and research is sustainable living environment. And linked to this, the board of directors also requested us to have a look at internationalization and to see how we can make internationalization more sustainable, more in line with our general mission. And so when we looked at internationalization and sustainability, we immediately saw, of course, the biggest carbon footprint is caused by traveling. Can I have the next slide, please? And so I took actually an overview from Ghent University because we don't have one from In Holland University yet. But so the chart from Ghent University clearly shows that if you look at the CO2 emissions from the university as a whole, then, well, natural gas is the top, but the next one is already the use of air travel by employees. So that's really a big one. And this is not to say that this is the same for all universities, especially not for In Holland University of Applied Sciences, who is not as large and not as research intensive as Ghent University, and so there's less travel by academics, I suppose. But it is a sign that it's really a big part of CO2 emissions in higher education. And so we started to obviously think about what we can do as a higher education institution. And the first thing, obviously, is to try to change the mode of traveling from plane to train, which is an option if you live in the Netherlands, which is in Europe with a good system of train transportation. So that's lucky. So I started to connect, as was already mentioned by the previous speakers. It's very important to connect with colleagues and see what's already being done in terms of initiatives and in terms of policy development. I'm in a policy department, so I'm really focused on policy development. And I learned that my colleagues in the HR department were assigned to draw a new policy for traveling. Can I have the next slide, please? And I connected to them and asked them if I could join them to try to find a way to make this new policy, travel policy, more sustainable in line with our strategic goals. And of course, they welcomed me, but they were also a bit hesitant, I noticed, because they were very much, their perspective was really on how can we arrange this in line with our HR policy and with what our staff needs, which is obviously very good. But making it more sustainable is not necessarily the easiest step for staff members or for HR colleagues. So this led to a lot of conversations about what is actually needed, what is necessary, and what is nice to have. And it was really interesting to see that there was also a development within those conversations. So at first we were really kind of almost at opposite poles of the discussion. But then I started to understand a little bit more about the technicalities of such a policy. And my HR colleagues started to really get involved into the sustainability part. So the project leader actually said almost at the end of the process that she was actually now an ambassador of green traveling herself, and she hadn't expected that. So that was really nice to hear. And something similar was said by our board member, who was actually who assigned us with this. And she said, well, looking back at the last few months, I'm actually very sorry to have allowed people to travel to certain destinations because I wouldn't allow them to do so now. So she also noticed a change of mind about this. So I felt that not just the policy itself, but also the whole process leading up to the policy has already done a lot in the mindset of my colleagues and myself as well. So that was already something of an outcome, I think. So one of the things that was really a pity is that we don't have a green team or a green office, so we weren't able to use them. But could I have the previous slide, please? We did involve the internationalization team, and we also involved the Participation Council, which is an official body within our university, and we needed their consent because it was about the regulations for staff traveling. And we also needed the academic directors on board because they would be the ones to actually implement this policy. And then, of course, the board members had to decide on this. And so we took all of these steps, and sometimes we had to go back one step because there were quite a lot of uncertainties among our colleagues. Uncertainty mostly about, will it take me longer to get there, and will that take off time from my family, for instance? Or will it cost more so that we have less budget? Well, things like that. Next slide, please. And while developing this policy, we also encountered a lot of dilemmas, policy dilemmas, because if we want to, well, the first thing we did was, can we reduce traveling? Because that's the best thing to reduce CO2. But less traveling makes internationalization less inclusive. And we also have inclusion as a value as an institution. So both for staff and for students, it's very important to open internationalization to everyone. So that's a dilemma. Then shorter distances also opens up internationalization for more people, but it's also less knowledge of the world. So is that true? Does it mean that if you travel less distances, you actually look out a part of the world and you develop less knowledge about those parts? We don't know exactly, but it might be true. And then green travel usually means slower travel. And that means less time for either meeting in the place where your destination, or less time to spend with your family. And then train travel is still more expensive in general than flying. Can I have the next slide, please? So we were really looking to develop a policy that would kind of balance those dilemmas. And so the first questions that we have in the policy that we ask all of our staff members who are considering to travel abroad: is this travel essential? Now there's a gray area, obviously, because what's essential, but still we just want to really have them reflect. Is it really necessary? And then we wanted to make sure that everybody is aware that sustainability is the priority. It's not the costs. Obviously, we do not have a very large budget, but still, if there's a choice to make about how to travel, sustainability should always come first. The train travel is required if you can reach your destination within 8 hours of train traveling. And if you want to travel to a destination further away than 8 hours by train, you're very welcome to do so. It will be compensated in terms of travel time is work time, and you will be able to spend the money on this as well. You can travel first class if it's only 150% of the second class ticket. One requirement is that you book through an agent, and that's necessary to know where people are going, but also because then we know what the CO2 reduction actually is. So we want to monitor what we achieve. Can I have the next slide? So we did encounter some obstacles along the way. We had a lot of colleagues doubting if this was actually the right way to go, because they are very, they are ambassadors of internationalization, and they felt that a policy on green traveling might limit internationalization options. And they were also uncertain about the availability of the booking agent. So our current booking agents be able to provide train traveling? And that's actually a concern that I share. We see that our travel agency, and also we hear from other institutions, are not really set up for train traveling yet. So they often cannot really provide all the train trips that you need. So that's something that's work in progress. And that's something that we as higher education institutions should also probably join together in talking to those travel agencies to make sure that they will develop an offer in this. Then, of course, there's also the financial schemes, like, for instance, in Europe, Erasmus+, which does give extra scholarships for traveling green, but it's not enough. So it's like almost a symbolic amount. And also the projects that are being done within Erasmus often require that you meet face-to-face, and that dissemination events are also face-to-face events. And this also stimulates traveling, and this could be changed, I think. And then obviously there's this big item of train tickets being more expensive than flying. And so there's no level playing field for these sectors, which is really a government thing and really an international item. So it's not something that we can easily solve, but it is something that is actually in the way of making good decisions about green traveling. So a cultural and a systemic change are needed as well. Can I have the next slide, please? So what's next for us as the University of Applied Sciences? We are going to monitor the emissions, obviously, at institutional level. But we also know this is just the first step, because now we have really specifically looked at how can we reduce traveling by airplane within Europe, so within 8 hours of train travel time. But there are also still a lot of flights which are going beyond those 8 hours. So we need to reduce those as well in order to become more neutral. And then there are the intercontinental travels, which obviously have the highest carbon footprint. So we also need to start discussing those. And then there's the group of students, which we haven't touched at all yet. We've deliberately started with staff because those are the that's the group that we can actually offer something, because we pay for their trips, so we are in the lead, so to say, which is not the same for students. And we do want to also focus on the students, and we will. So starting with study trips that we organize, but then also the individual student mobility. And finally, also, we want to have a look at if we organize an international event and invite staff or invite guests from abroad, can we also persuade them to travel green? So that's on our list, on our wish list. Can I have the next slide, please? So thank you very much for your attention. And well, any questions are welcome, obviously.
Thank you so much, Jane, Edinda, and Monica, for the wonderful presentations. I think we had some brilliant examples of challenges as well, and that we need to be mindful of the challenges. But I think there's a ray of hope as well, because all of you shared that you were able to overcome some of them, and you're on track to handle the remaining or pending challenges as well. So we're free, and the platform is open for questions. I can see that there has been some wonderful engagement in the chat as well. But if any participant wants to ask a direct question, please raise your hand, like in Zoom, and we'll unmute you. All right, I think most of the questions have been answered in the chat, and we will be sharing the recording in a couple of weeks. So you will be able to see the session on YouTube, and whoever is watching it, once it has been uploaded, thank you for joining even after the Climate Action Week, because these resources are there to help people who are working for a cause. And please stay in touch, like follow CANI on social media platforms so that you remain updated as well. I once again would like to thank all of the volunteers, B and Pitulia as well, for being there and running the background show and ensuring that the session goes smoothly. And if there are, we still have 5 more minutes. So if there's something that Jane, you, Erinda, or Monica would like to add as a last point, please feel free. And just a reminder that we have another session on the same topic to suit participants from different time zones happening today as well. So you will be finding the recordings of both the sessions on YouTube.
I have a question for Jane. Well, a comment and a question. I've started to use ChatGPT too, and it saves a lot of time. Virtual assistant. You have to be careful, but. And second, do you measure how if students' perception or behavior change after they've participated in all these activities? That would be like the second or the third step.
Yeah, we definitely do. So in last year, I used the tool that I think CANI shared. It might be the same one that you use, Monica. And I asked them to submit the scores at the beginning of the program, and I got them to submit their scores at the end of the program. The issue I had there was that not everyone would submit the scores, so it was hard to measure across the whole across all the participants whether there was an impact. So that's why right now we're mainly just using the completion rate, and we use a survey at the end of the program and ask them to basically rate whether their knowledge on sustainability and whether their practices improved during the program or not.
So we have another question in the chat, that is anyone using carbon literacy program on their campus?
I'm not aware of it, no.
I've explored I've explored the Sully test, which I think, Jane, is maybe the one that you used. The Sully test could be, and Climate Fresk. I'm exploring it, but I do have an account for Sully test.
Yes, I think Climate Fresk is an amazing set of tools. And so is Silitest. Like I also tried the pilot task at the end of last year, and I think they have really good resources to improve knowledge about climate action.
And one thing that I'm doing, I think that I put in the chat, is I had, after the talks about, your talks and all the talks, I made my students for extra credit. If you have extra credit or pizza, they always participate. So that's something for you to know. But anyway, for 2 points of extra credit to calculate their carbon emissions for all their traveling, because study abroad students travel every weekend. And they have completed it, and they have, some of them are like not in shock, but surprised of how much they emit. But one thing that you have to be careful is not shaming them, like, oh, look how bad you're emitting all that, just like making them realize, well, this is how much you emit. Think of the ways that you're going to compensate for this. So.
Yeah, and also to make it fun to travel green. That's also one of the things that we try to do. So make our colleagues want to try to travel by train, because it's so much fun to see the landscape change and to stop at different destinations and to meet people on the train, well, things like that. So yeah, really make it a new way of living, which is also very nice. And yeah, it's different, but also nice.
So I can see some more relevant links being shared in the chat as well. So the participants are free, you're more than welcome to check those as well. And thank you so much once again for the amazing audience. You've been very engaging, and I think that brings more beauty to the discussion. And it's so good to have so many people who are passionate about climate action. And thank you so much once again, Adinda, Jane, and Monica, for being here. I think I leave this session with a lot of inspiration in how I can add value to the community around me as well. And thank you so much. I hope to see everybody in the virtual space doing something, taking some action for climate change in the near future. Thank you.